Hello, I'm Ed Rabyd, otherwise known as the Rabyd Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. The purpose of this channel is educational in regards to deconversion and atheist issues, as well as Bible, theology, philosophy, politics, and relationship to those issues. So you're free to share my videos as much as you would like. As a form, this tends to take the form of a kind of a visual podcast. I don't really edit a lot, if at all, and so that's kind of where I go with it. I was originally going to redo my slavery video, but, the more I thought about it, the more I began to realize that some of the more recent events on this channel in regards to, for instance, some of the theists in the room trying to defend God, basically endorsing or at least allowing the issue of slavery, kind of brought up a deconversion issue for me, which is how theology can influence how you react to the world to the point that you see groups of people, in particular in black and white terms. When we look at some of the things that the Bible, Christians, in particular when I was a Christian, I was always trying to justify a few things that God had in His Word, because the whole thing is God's Word. It's all inspired by God. So you're in that mental state of what do I do when I run into a passage where God does indeed order genocide, including pregnant women, baby boys, you name it. The innocent are slaughtered along with the guilty. And the only thing that's left alive in the one story I'm thinking about is virgin girls who then become the sexual property of their masters, of the conquerors. Okay, you also have the issue of slavery, which I've dealt with all week long. We've also, we'll see the issue of rape, because there is one incident where if a woman is basically forced to lie with a man, the man can simply, and neither one of them had she hasn't had intercourse, she was a virgin, then he could pay the bride price to her father and take her as his wife. That's an interesting way that allows rape victims to become the wives of their rapists. When you look at some of the things that are involved in all that, one of the things that happens is, as a Christian and a believer, you begin to justify, under certain circumstances, very heinous acts. As an atheist, I don't find a problem condemning any of these things because they cause a lot of human harm. Rape is certainly humanly harmful to the victim. Murder is certainly harmful to the victim. Genocide should be resoundingly condemned. No group of people I know of as a group should ever be slaughtered. Plus, it's a violation of individual rights. And on the list goes. Slavery, to me, is just a moral evil. On what basis do we say one person has the right to own another person? We don't have any basis for that other than we want to. At certain times in history, we wanted to very badly. That's not what we need to be looking at, though, because from a deconversion standpoint, once you deconvert, one of the things that you have to wrestle with constantly is I don't have to justify God. I don't have to look at the God of the Bible and say that He's a good guy. I don't have to do that. And that becomes a real issue to a lot of people, especially if you've been in the faith a long time like I was. I now... one of the things I noticed almost immediately is how critical I would be of the Bible afterwards. People asked me, did I ever go through the year of anger? Yeah, I did it in the pulpit. I was still in the pulpit preaching the good news, the gospel, and at the same time didn't believe a word of it. And I was also very angry that I'd wasted so much time. But at the same time, I kind of channeled that into energy to, go pursue an advanced degree to try to find another career. So I was, still actively using it, but I was still angry. That deconversion thing, once you go through the mourning process and the grieving process over your faith, and it very much is very similar, you begin to realize that there are other things that you used to do. One of the things I think that the Bible does and indoctrination does, and something we have to deconvert from, and this is why you can justify genocide, and you can justify rape, and you can justify murder in certain cases, and you can justify, slavery, because those people are lesser than the people of God. A current issue, to me, is the whole Israeli-Palestinian issue, because America, there's a lot of fundamentalist Christians in the United States who base their support of Israel and the Jews on the fact that the Jews are God's chosen people, according to their religion and according to many Christians. And so what you end up with is a whole foreign policy that has been based on this idea. Well, what does that do in practicality? Well, we tend to look at the Israelis as human beings like us, and the Palestinians are the outgroup. They're, so when something bad happens to them, when somebody gets killed on their camp, nobody really sheds too many tears. It causes us right now, from a foreign policy standpoint, to look at one group of people as less human than the other. And this is really what the absolute screwball effect of indoctrination, where you can't question the Bible and you can't question God, really starts to mess up your head, because it allows you to look at people as lesser. And some groups of people are lesser than others. One of the big deconversion issues for me is learning to get past that. Another good example, the whole LGBTQ community is looked down upon by Christians as less than human. Now they would argue, we love the sinner, we just hate the sin. They can say that all they want, but the fact of the matter is, I've heard many Christians say, if a trans person or a bisexual person or a gay or lesbian is killed, or something has been said, it's God just getting back at them. If that happens to a heterosexual person or their heterosexuality, of course, they get all upset. But what we really need to understand about this indoctrination thing is it really deep-seats tribalism. And tribalism is simply there's an in-group and there's an out-group. And the Bible and religion have a tendency to do that because we have to look at God a certain way. When we see passages where God basically orders genocide of a people, they were evil people. Yeah, but the Israelis aren't evil for killing them all off. How does that work? You end up spending a lot of time trying to justify the evil character of a very distasteful character in the Bible. Dan Barker even wrote a book about this, how God is the most distasteful character of all of literature. And he goes about in that book to prove it, and does a fairly decent job just by using the text of the Bible. When I look at this, the deconversion issue becomes very apparent. Here on this channel, I had somebody literally trying to say that slavery was okay as a way of getting out of debt. There's also a bunch of other ways to get out of debt that don't involve slavery. And if God was really the omniscient, all-powerful God, he would have known that, and that's what he would have put in his law. Put a way to get out of debt for slavery. And let's be honest, there's a whole bunch of other slavery that was going on for profit gain, sexual gratification or whatever else. That was just happening. I'm not trying to be, dog on people that want to defend God this way, but it really gets despicable to me at times how we used to think. To me, religion creates the outgroups that are just unnecessarily created. And that's really becomes the deconversion issue, doesn't it? Because I can still find myself, on occasion, flipping back into the old way of thinking. I look at the Israeli-Palestinian issue, for instance, far differently. I look at LGBTQ issues far differently. I have an LGBTQ friend, a trans friend, at work. They're just friends, but I'm very supportive of them because it's almost like I'm trying to make up for all the times where I was picking on them. Not in front of everybody's face. I'm much more polite than that. But back when I was a Christian, there were certain groups of people, certain kinds of people that I would look at as lesser, not really truly fully human. And to me, this is one of the most damning effects of all religion, is it allows us to dehumanize the out-group and raise up the in-group. It's an unnecessary dehumanizing. A lot of people say, well, that would happen anyway. That's true. Tribalism is fairly deep-seated. It's just religion gives us a whole hell of a lot more reasons to do it than if it didn't exist. I wanted to talk about this today because every once in a while, I have family members that want to talk this way, and this becomes the deconversion issue. What do you do when you hear a family member talking about certain people and you go, listen, I may have a different opinion on that. They should still be treated as human beings. They should still have rights. You guys are, no trans, lesbian, whatever has ever hurt you. When I talk about the Israeli-Palestinian debate, I don't know. If I was the Palestinians, I guess I can understand. You were living in that area, and then all of a sudden, because of some religious promise from some fundamentalist Christians, combined with the Holocaust and something evil happening to the Jews, all of a sudden these Jewish refugees are allowed to come into your home, which has been the Palestinian home for centuries. All of a sudden, they're allowed to come and take your land. It sounds suspiciously, eerily familiar, doesn't it? Who are really the bad guys here? I mean, just because the Israelis look nicer and have better toys doesn't mean that they're not the bad guys. When we look at our own history here in the United States, the whole manifest destiny was a religious idea that allowed us to look at Native Americans as lesser people. It becomes really, really more difficult as I deconvert more and more for me to do that. I began to realize that if I'm going to have outgroups, I'm going to have legitimate outgroups that are there because they do evil, not because my religion tells me so. This has become a real crux issue for me because every time, because I involve myself in political science as somebody with a political science degree, and I see this all the time. And between Christian nationalism and the Catholics, with their getting away with pedophilia, the whole 9 yards. And it's like, I see the atheist community kind of going, yeah. And I don't know, from somebody who's come out of that, I mean, I know there's a lot of atheist YouTubers out there that have always been atheists because they just, can't rationally accept a God. But there are others of us that have come out of some form of theism. And what we begin to realize is it's really, really hard to have outgroups anymore for simple reasons of, God said so or whatever. And so I have a lot less outgroups. If I have an outgroup and I maintain my tribe with somebody, it's usually along political lines of what I think is the best ideas and what's the worst ideas. And that becomes a little bit more cerebral to me. But even so, politics has a tendency to be steeped in religion in the United States. And so often people do things not just because of political reasons, but also because of religious ones. The current state of America really bothers me quite a bit because on the one hand, I have a group of people that want to censor things that offend them. They want to do other things that keep their outgroup, the Republicans, off balance, accusing them of all kinds of things with a lot of name calling and not a lot of facts most of the time. That's true of both sides, but it seems to be more of the left these days with the emotional appeal. On the right, I can't trust those guys with the Christian nationalists to not try to shove their Christianity down my throat, to force me to be a Christian, or at least follow Christian ethics as we do our government. That becomes a real strange thing, and it becomes a real power play for me. The idea of teaching, intelligent design along with creation, bad idea. Abstinence-only education because that's what God's word said, bad idea. It's these deconversion issues, and if you disagree with that, you're on the outgroup, okay? And they come at you very, very vehemently. So I don't know which way to turn most of the time anymore as a deconverted Christian, because I don't always see other people as outgroups. When the liberals, atheists want to tell me that I should hate the conservatives, I recognize that there are conservative atheists. There are people that are very libertarian atheists too. And I can't really sit there and say, I don't really want to make them an outgroup. I want to make them a discussion partner. And maybe that's the tricky thing where I'm trying to see where deconversion is kind of taking hold of my life. I don't really want us versus them anymore. I think religion plays on that far too much, and it trains us up to think that way. I don't want to think that way anymore. I don't want to look at somebody and think, they're on my outgroup. I don't have to listen to them or talk to them. To me, I will know deconversion is mostly complete in my life when I can walk up to anybody and think, I really should start a conversation with this person to find out what they're about, not look at them and go, not my kind of person. They're in my outgroup. I don't know if any of this really jives with anybody, and I hope I'm not rambling on for no reason, but this is something that has concerned me for quite some time as a deconverted Christian, of how, yes, intellectually I can understand that the Bible and Christianity have trained me a certain way to look at the world, a certain way to have in-groups and out-groups that are based on, inspiration of divine revelation, which I don't no longer think exists. And then I've got other out-groups that say, well, we should hate this group of people because they're politically different. Atheism leads this certain direction. Well, it doesn't now. I don't think it does. I think what we really need to consider from a deconversion standpoint is how to start looking at everybody as a human being entitled to certain rights from us, just as much as we should look at ourselves as human beings and say, I have certain rights in front of you. That's where I think the real crux of the debate needs to come, is extending and learning to extend both honor and grace and rights to the people that we find most despicable sometimes. Even if we find them personally objectionable, can we have the capacity to at least try to dialogue with them instead of screaming in their face? It seems like it would be a little bit more productive if we did that. And part of getting to that place where you can think that way is overcoming the hurdle that religion gives you with all its in-groups, its out-groups, its sins, its righteousness, how you can exalt yourself in righteousness as part of your tribe, but discourage the sinner because, he's not doing the right thing. He's the out-group. I want to thank you for all stopping by. I hope this discussion made a little bit more sense. It's just a kind of a discussion starter, so you're free to comment away below. But, this is something that has bothered me probably since I deconverted, is all the times that I used to justify this God in the name of creating an ethic that I think somehow affected me, to look at people negatively simply because they didn't agree with my holy book. I think that's got to change, and it's a slow process, probably more so for me than a lot of other people, I suppose, because I was a pastor, but it is a necessary process, and one that I now look forward to taking the journey with. So, with that, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you coming. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, does anything with my videos, because it just helps me get more noticed. Getting awful close to that 100 subscriber mark, so we'll see if that happens. And, hopefully someday I can convince you to be a rabid atheist like myself. In the meantime, this is Rabyd, also known as the Rabid Atheist, signing off and wishing you a good day.